The silver was set to dissolve, being 3 ounces with as small a quantity of aqua fortis as I could, or thus 9 ounces of aqua fortis unto 3 ounces of silver, and all that was dissolved was poured off while it was very warm in a cold glass. And forthwith it did thicken, and there most of the silver did settle to the bottom. Then, pouring on 1.5 ounces of water upon it, was left.
That he's after the secrets of the universe. It sounds very spooky and sort of cosmic.
There is nothing, the works of God only set apart, which so much beautifies and adorns the soul and mind of man as does knowledge of the good arts and sciences.
He was trying to find out what you could find out, and it was a very difficult thing to discover at this time. All sorts of fantastic astronomical experiments were underway, and then he also engaged in alchemical experiments for a long period of time.
John Dee was one of the truly great intellectuals of Elizabeth I's reign. He went to Cambridge when he was 15 to study Greek, Latin, philosophy, maths and astronomy, and his passion for knowledge persisted throughout his entire life. So respected was Dee that when Elizabeth became Queen, his astrological skills were sought for identifying the most appropriate day for her coronation. At his home in Mortlake, Dee amassed an enormous collection of books, together with astronomical instruments, 2 globes and accurate clocks.
Certainly not the British Library of its time, but he was very concerned with trying to sort of build up a body of material that would attract people, that would produce sort of new ideas and new thoughts. At one point he had a very ambitious plan to actually get the government to finance the setting up of a sort of precursor of the British Library, which never came off like a lot of his grander schemes. He's surrounded by the royal court, he's surrounded by intellectuals who come from Germany and from France and from Spain to meet him.
So he has a sort of international celebrity.
One of the features of this period, I think, was that intellectuals knew each other from around Europe. They corresponded quite a lot. They had the advantage of using Latin as a common language that they could exchange ideas with. He was communicating the whole time with intellectuals around Europe. I mean, like Mercator, who's this famous cartographer. There was a sort of community of intellectuals spread across Europe, and indeed across the sort of religious divides as well as geographical ones. People who were sort of in Catholic countries communicating with people in Protestant ones. They crossed borders in that sense as well. He was very plugged into that, and that was one of the sort of remarkable features of the period. And he was the English representative, in a sense, or one of the key figures in that network.
The art of navigation demonstrates how, by the shortest good way, by the aptest direction, and in the shortest time, a sufficient ship between any 2 places may be conducted, and in all storms and natural disturbances chancing, how to use the best possible means whereby to recover the place first assigned.
At a time when explorers like Walter Raleigh and Francis Drake were circumnavigating the globe, an accurate map was vital for the discovery of new territory and for the safety of British ships. In the British Library, one of Dee's maps survives.
Dept vero de jure rex omne terras and honores omnes dignitates et jura. The rights of the king over all of the land and honour of whatever, my Latin's awful. And it's fantastic.
We've got Greenland, Iceland,
The coast of California here, which is remarkable.
this is 1580. We've got little rivers and mountains sort of indicated. The detail is meticulous, it's impressive.
The job he wanted, he yearned for, was to be court philosopher. Unfortunately, in Elizabeth's court, there was no such position, and she was notoriously mean. She had any number of servants who were concerned with the management of her person, even grooms of the stool who were concerned with toiletry matters, but she wasn't prepared to pay for a court philosopher. And as a result, he had to do all the work that he did on a sort of freelance basis, quite often wasn't paid for it as well. And he was notoriously bad at playing the system. I mean, dreadful at it. Normally the way of getting money, if you're an intellectual, was by seeking a patron. And you would get a patron by putting a very fulsome acknowledgement at the front of your work. He had these dedications and acknowledgements, but they were always to people who were dead or out of powers. He was useless at playing the system to that end.
O comfortable allurement, O ravishing persuasion to deal with a science whose subject is so ancient, so pure, so excellent, so surrounding all creatures, so used of the almighty and incomprehensible wisdom of the Creator, in distinct creation of all creatures, in all their distinct parts, properties, natures, and virtues, by order and most absolute number, brought from nothing to the formality of their being and state.
In 1570, Dee edited an edition of Euclid's Elements. At the time, the pursuit of mathematics was regarded as suspicious, and Dee wrote this preface in praise of the subject.
This is folio 8. He's pasted in a little strip and written over the top, sort of late Elizabethan Tippex style. Suppose the 3 circles given to be. Now I wonder what was underneath. We'd better not peel it off and have a look. This looks like a product of a very well-ordered mind. He's noted as he's gone through when he's resolved these problems. John Dee upon the 16th problem of the 21st problem, and then given a date. This is probably a text that he expects to circulate, perhaps amongst the community and the visitors to his house in Mortlake.
The 1st of August there was poured thereon a good quantity of rainwater that had been filtered, and therein the calx was well boiled, and when it was settled it was poured off by installation, and more water poured thereon and set to boil as afore.
The reputation of the Elizabethan alchemists was much derided. Playwrights like Ben Jonson depicted them as greedy madmen. When you read Dee's diaries, he's quite often reporting on his illnesses, no doubt from conducting his chemical experiments without proper ventilation.
What's described here is a preparation of silver chloride. It's quite clear how it's been done. He's taken silver, he's dissolved it in nitric acid to make a solution of silver nitrate, and then he's precipitated silver chloride by adding seawater. This is the strawberry water of the sea. The important bit, I think, is of the sea. So this contains sodium chloride. Silver chloride being insoluble is precipitated by adding the seawater to the acid solution.
Can I stop you there? Precipitated.
In his language, it is which did presently strike it down. And I take that to mean precipitate. In other words, a solid's formed from the solution and falls to the bottom of the vessel.
And if we just look at the sort of quantities, he's got 3 ounces of silver, 1.5 ounces of water. He's got 3 gallons of rainwater.
I mean, 3 ounces of silver equates to 85 grams. From what we know now, of course, we can calculate from the amount of silver that he took how much silver chloride should be obtained, because we know the atomic weights of silver and chlorine. And the answer is from 3 ounces of silver, one should get 4.0 ounces of silver chloride, which in fact is exactly what he says he got.
So he was a good scientist.
Absolutely.
At the peak of his powers, disaster struck when Dee's quest for knowledge took him into a new realm. He wanted to speak with the angels.
The thing that wasn't controversial at the time was the existence of angels. You would have been regarded as a crackpot if you thought there were no such things. The question was whether or not you should or could actually communicate with them. The thing that made what he was doing odd was that he was trying to set up a communication outside the accepted, received orthodox channels.
So this is a man who is literally, again, at the cutting edge of any avenue to make inquiry of the natural and the spiritual and the divine.
I'm better call it bleeding edge. I mean, everything, it was extremely dangerous territory.
What was so dangerous for Dee were the actions of his scryer, or medium, Edward Kelly. An opportunist who'd been accused of forging money, Kelly clung to Dee for years, encouraging their conversations with the angels. They would set up their table, put their philosopher's stone on a wax tablet, and Kelly would wait for the angels to communicate through him to Dee, whilst Dee took notes of Kelly's utterances, which survive in his Book of Mysteries.
Uriel opened a book in his own hand and said, "The fountain of wisdom is opened. Nature shall be known, earth with her secrets disclosed, the elements with their powers judged. There are 49 angels, glorious, appointed for the government of all earthly actions. By them shall you work in the learning of wisdom, secrets of the air, as in the bowels and entrails of the earth."
Kelly has a particularly intense sort of revelational conversation with an angel, and he makes a proposition to Dee that Dee's a little bit aghast at.
This angel apparently says that Dee has to surrender his wife to Kelly. They have to sleep together as part of the deal, as it were, of receiving this information. Indeed, it's a full wife swap. Dee sleeps with Kelly's wife, Kelly sleeps with Dee's wife. Dee, after agonising, as you can imagine, and actually his wife, agree to this.
Because his wife's not too keen.
She's absolutely, no, she's horrified by the whole thing. Doesn't force her into it, he asks her to do it, she does it. There's these two words that appear in one of his diaries, pactum factum, which meant the pact was fulfilled. 9 months later, she has a little child. This child is named Medemia, after one of the angels. So it's quite possible that the child was Kelly's. This is right at the end of their angelic conversations, as it were. That's the deal that Dee comes to in order to get the secrets that he so desperately wants.
It's sort of real evidence, I think, that this man is desperate for that knowledge. He's prepared to give his wife away.
He ended up being excluded from the court and powerless and having to sort of scrape by on whatever job he could get. So I think in the end he would have considered his life as a failure. He died in poverty in Mortlake with the last few desperate efforts, final efforts to get in touch with the angels and get that message that had eluded him.